Okay, series and parallel combinations expert. This is probably not the most difficult expert circuit you could handle, but it's a really good challenge for a high school student. So if you can do this, you'll definitely feel like an expert. So what I need to do is I need to resolve my circuit. Okay? I don't know if you'll find that phrase too often on the internet, what I learned. It just means to simplify it. That means you start with the loops furthest from your voltage source here, and you figure out how to replace them with resistors looking at the parallel and series elements. So I'm looking at R3 and R4, and I know those are in parallel. So I could replace those with a new resistor. So I'm redrawing, and you're going to redraw these things multiple times. Okay, and there's R5, and this one is my new one. I'm going to call it R6, and it replaces the parallel group here. So now R6, and I probably want to label my ohms here. R1 is 6 ohms, R2 is 4 ohms, R5 is 2.5 ohms, and R6 is replacing that parallel part. So 1 over R6 equals 1 over R3 plus 1 over R4. And because parallels, you add the reciprocals. So 1 over R6 equals 1 over 6 plus 1 over 2. So 1 over R6 equals 1 6 plus 3 6, which is 4 6, which is 2/3. That means that R6 is reciprocal to 3 halves, so or 1.5 ohms. Okay? Now, notice that R6 and R5 are in series. So, I can redraw my circuit. There's my battery. There's R1. And then there's this branch where I get R2. And then there's this other branch where I'm going to get a new resistor R7. Which is going to take the place of R6 and R5. Okay, so R6 was 1.5 ohms because it was the 3 halves, and R5 is a 2.5 ohms, so I get 4 ohms. So I have a 4 ohm resistor there, and R2 was 4 ohms originally, and R1 was 6 ohms. Now notice R2 and R7 are parallel. So I'm going to do another drawing. So I have R1, and then I'm going to have a new resistor I'm going to call R8. Now R8 these are parallel, so 1 over R8 is equal to 1 over R2 plus 1 over R7. So 1 over R8 is equal to 1 over 4 ohms plus 1 over 4 ohms. So I get 2/4, which is 1/2. So if I take the reciprocal, I get R8 is equal to 2 ohms. Okay. Now I see that R1 and R8 are in series, so I can replace those with a new resistor. And I could call it R9, but what I'm going to do is I'm just going to call it REQ. And REQ is R1 plus R8, which we can see is 8 ohms. Okay, so now going back to our original picture, I knew I started with 24 volts and I have 8 ohms, so that means I have 3 amps total, which means I get 72 watts. And now and then I could fill in my resistors. So R1 was 6, and then that was 4, 6 to 2.5. Now I can use my information to go back and analyze the circuit, and I'll do that in part 2.